Hello, today we will be looking at the applied ethics of euthanasia and capital punishment. We'll be looking at situation ethics, natural moral law, and virtue ethics' view on all these situations. We'll start off with Callum talking about euthanasia.
So, euthanasia comes from two Greek words that translate into good death. It's typically gentle and easy way out. It's a caring act and ends suffering. Euthanasia is, in turn, it's a shortening of life, basically, administered by a doctor. Voluntary euthanasia, specifically, is where someone who is mentally stable and in their right mind requests it. And mentally stable and right mind being the key, because you would not allow someone insane to make that decision for themselves, because it could most likely be the wrong decision. Now, there are some ethical issues with this. There's obviously the effect on society, and also the right to having their death granted, as in, can a convicted criminal, murderer, whatever, dash their life sentence for, I don't know, being euthanized? Does that make sense? Should they not suffer? And now, assisted suicide is when whoever is concerned is given the means or medicine to kill themselves, as in a patient will ask their doctor for medicine to end their own life. Once provided, it can be used at any time of the patient's choosing. And with this ethical issue, you have to understand whether this person is, well, like voluntary euthanasia. Essentially, it's the effect on society and whether they have the right to die. Now we've got natural moral law and how it concerns euthanasia. So, according to Aquinas, the most fearsome evil, quote, is not pain or disability, but death itself, end quote. So suicide, he argues, is contrary to the natural inclination of any life form, which is to stay alive. The Catholic Church in 1980 released their Declaration on Euthanasia, and this reinforces Aquinas' judgments, as well as referring to the sanctity of life principle, as in, God gave us life, so do we have the right to end our own lives? Is that not dishonoring God if we do? So if we do that, do we deserve passage into heaven at all if we squander God's gift? And most Christians will commonly refer to the sanctity of life principle when arguing against voluntary euthanasia or assisted suicide. Now, situation ethics also has a take on this. Now, imagine a man, let's call him Hefe, and he's 22. Hefe has a terminal disease, and he has 3 months to live, and in the last month of his life, Hefe will be in great pain. So, do we allow Hefe to be euthanized? Do we allow Hefe to die so he will not suffer, or do we let him live out his life the way that he might choose? He might want to live his life to the fullest, considering he's only 22. He might not have done a lot of things. He might want to travel, and he hasn't yet, and we can allow that. But if we euthanize him, he won't be able to do that. But we would be sparing him. We would stop his suffering. Now, Fletcher admits that there's always risks in these kind of decisions when trying to get agape, as we can't know all the risks that come with this. You might have a misdiagnosis, as in Hefe. We were told that Hefe has 3 months to live, but he actually has 3 years. So have we murdered someone, or are we sparing him? Because he's never going to know if he's dead, will he? So would it be any different? Now, lastly, we've got virtue ethics view on voluntary euthanasia and assisted suicide. So, if somebody is in a state where they are unable to choose eudaimonia, would you be able to keep living if you can't achieve eudaimonia, considering that is the point in someone's life? You must ask, would it be proper to end this person's life, or would you give them a chance to rectify their choices in life, make them closer to eudaimonia, to that chance, or do you end their life completely? Because as far as the virtue ethics goes and is concerned, their life is forfeit, essentially. It's not worth anymore. It's not worth the time or the resources, because they can't achieve eudaimonia, and that's humans' end goal. That's all I have to say about euthanasia and assisted suicide. I'll pass on to Noah.
The death penalty, also known as capital punishment, is the execution by a court of law for a criminal offence. In the modern world, this is most commonly done via lethal injection. Crimes which can lead to such a punishment in the United States are murder, treason, espionage, and large-scale drug trafficking. Today, we will be looking at this extreme punishment through the ethics of situation ethics, virtue ethics, and natural moral law, starting with the latter. Natural moral law compels people to use their own thought and observation to understand what is right and wrong. Using this, we know that killing someone is a negative act and causes pain and suffering. We also know that it breaks the primary precepts that tell us that life is sacred and which is supported by the sanctity of life and the Ten Commandments. So, for example, sentencing a murderer to death, we are responding to a wrong act in a way that only causes more pain and more suffering, which will only cause a cycle of suffering and lead to no good. To move on to Fletcher's situation ethics, our main outcome for all our actions should be agape. So in the same situation, sentencing a murderer to death isn't a loving thing to do, as it causes pain. But then the question occurs of by permanently removing them from the world and permanently preventing someone from committing more actions of hate, is that a more loving thing for society? For the victim's family? So Fletcher's situation ethics allows the end to justify the means, and it would make the moral responsibility fall onto the judge and jury of the case. To view the situation and to make the final decision with their end goal always being agape. Virtue ethics' main goal of reaching eudaimonia is unachievable with the death penalty, as you can't improve your character and become virtuous when you're dead. This ethic would push for rehabilitation of inmates of the prison system, so they can improve their virtues and try to reach eudaimonia. While doing this, those helping them will also be improving their virtues of charity, kindness, and caring. And by reaching a collective end goal, eudaimonia may be reached in the lifetimes of the prisoners, as rehabilitation is more important than death. Thank you for listening. We'll now pass to Real Callum and Real Noah for a Q&A.